Hello and welcome to this video on Mishnah concept number 9. Now this is actually our second video which discusses Mishnah concept number 9, because today we are going to be learning Mishnayot Shabbat perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph, which actually goes back and is based on Mishnah concept number 9 with some extra additions. So to review Mishnah concept number 9, basically it is in order to make sure that we don't adjust a fire on Shabbat, the Rabbanan, the rabbis of the Mishnah, decreed that we may not leave uncooked food on the fire unless the fire is covered. Okay? For example, these days we use like a hot plate, a metal sheet, which is called in Yiddish a blech, and that works for our gas stoves to cover up the gas, the flame, and the knobs. But we're going to see in the Mishnah that they had old-fashioned stoves that they had to have different ways of covering. They had wood stoves or other type of fuel in their stoves. Okay? Now here's a new detail which we didn't learn last time. Even though we're allowed to leave cooked food on a covered fire, when we take it off, we may not put it back unless certain conditions are met. So it's not, so even though, let's say if you put your cholent, you put your food on a cup with a cover over the flame, you're allowed to leave it there. It's not allowed to just put it back after you let's say you want to serve your cholent. Once you take it off the fire, unless you meet certain conditions, which we're not going to be learning in this Mishnah, but we're going to learn that it's not so simple to be putting it back on. So we're beginning right now, perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph, where the first word is kira. A kira is an old-fashioned stove that, as we can see in the picture, we have modern stoves that have like gas pipes that send gas out, but they didn't have that in those days. They would have a earthenware box which would have a place to put fuel in. They would either put wood or sticks or coals or even sometimes straw, and they would put their pot on holes on the top, and the heat would rise up and cook. So what do you do with that type of oven if you want to leave a pot on there on Shabbat? So says the Mishnah, and we're going to learn that it makes a difference what type of oven. Basically, we're going to learn about 3 types of ovens. The first one is a kira. A kira features 2 holes in the top. It's a square. Notice the square shape, and notice that it has 2 holes for 2 pots on the top of the oven. Okay? So the kira is a model of oven that's like a medium heat. It's not too hot, but it's hot enough that you have to, it's not too hot, but you still have to cover the flame. So let's see. Kira she'esikua bekashu gvava. If you used a very low quality fuel, if you use straw and stubble, here's a picture over here of, you can see straw on the side of the oven there. Straw, like hay for horses or whatever, for cows. If you just took some straw, some thin sticks, which burn very quickly, notnim aleha tavshil, says the Mishnah, you can just put a cooked dish on there. Why? No cover is necessary. What's going on? The reason is because since straw burns out very quick, we know that if someone puts a pot over there, it's basically just to keep warm. He's not intending for it to cook because he knows the straw is going to go out very quick. However, begefet uve'etzim, if you use types of fuel that burn a long time, gefet is fuel made from olive pits, which burns a long time and is very hot. Eitzim is wood, which we all know wood. You make a campfire, you light your wood on fire. What happens is that your wood will burn for sometimes a long time. It could burn for an hour until your wood burns out. So then we're worried that he might play with the fire to get it to burn better. So then you have to cover it. Lo yitain, you may not put your pot on the kira with wood inside, ad sheyigrof, until you take a rake. Look over here. Look on page 51, everyone, and you can see a rake. He's raking out the coals to make sure that it's not so hot inside. So basically the oven gets very hot from the coals, from the wood or the gefet, and then he rakes it out so that there's no danger of him stoking it, of him playing with the fire. Then you can put the pot. Oh, or ad sheyitina te'efer, if he takes a shovel full of ash and he dumps the ash on top of the fuel, that's the same thing as covering the fire, because we know that he's not going to play with that fire. Once he's covered it with ash, he's shown that it's just to keep the food warm. He's not interested in cooking any further. So the basic rule to remember is, if we are worried that someone's going to take a piece of metal and stick it in his oven and play with the fuel to make it hotter, you may not put a pot on there unless you do something to the fuel to make it impossible to get hot. For example, you can rake out the fuel so there's no fuel left inside. The oven will have been hot already. Or you can dump some ash on top. Okay? Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai says, Chamin, even if you do all these conditions, you can still only put hot water. Because hot water doesn't need a lot of heat. Avalo tavshil, you can't put a cooked dish on top of your oven, your kira, even if the fuel is covered. Why not? Because since it needs a lot of heat, we're worried that he may try to get the fire started again to heat up the food. Okay? Hot water is not such a concern. It doesn't need to cook that long as actual food. Beit Hillel is more lenient, and they say chamin v'tavshel. If you put ashes on your fuel, or you raked out the coals, it's okay to put hot water or cooked food. We're not worried that you're going to play with the fire once you covered the fire or removed it. Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai says, notlin. You're allowed to take the food off of the covered oven. Avalo machzirin. But once you take it off, you can't put it back. Ubeit Hillel Omrim. Beit Hillel says, af machzirin. You can even put back the pot on Shabbat, we're talking about over here. Now, in Mishnah concept number 9, we explained that even Beit Hillel will not let you do that unless certain conditions are met. Those conditions are basically that the food didn't get cold in between. If the food got cold, then we're worried that he may try to start the fire again, or he has to basically not leave it for a long time. So he's got to hold the pot pretty much and take some food out and then return the pot to the fire. But the main thing you should know is that it's not so simple to put it back. If you want to put it back, there's certain conditions that you need. We now turn to Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Bet introduces us to a different type of oven. The oven is called a tanur. Tanur would be like one of these ovens right over here, which seems to be shaped like a cone. Now, some tanurim had a little opening where there was like a shelf where you can put something inside the tanur, but all tanurim were shaped like a cone with only room for one pot on the top, and the fuel went into the bottom. The thing with the tanur is that a tanur is much hotter because all the heat is focused in the top of that cone. And therefore the Mishnah says, Tanur shesikuhu bikash ubigvava. If you fueled a tanur with straw and stubble, which, as you remember before, is the lowest quality fuel that burns very quickly. If you put some straw, I'm sure you've seen these things lit on fire that burn very quick, like you burn newspapers on fire, it'll burn in 1 minute even, it'll be out, right? So straw maybe will last a little longer, but in a few minutes the straw will be gone. So even if you use such low quality fuel in a tanur, lo yitain, you're not allowed to put anything inside the tanur. Bein mitocho, whether inside the little shelf inside, if it has a shelf, bein me'al gabav, and whether it's on top. The tanur is so hot that it's the opposite of the kira. The kira, if you use straw, you don't even have to cover the flame. You can just put the pot on the straw, because the kira's heat will escape from its shape. The tanur is such a good, strong oven that even putting straw inside will make it so hot that we're worried that he's going to play with that heat. He's going to plan to cook that pot of food, and he might play with that heat on Shabbat. Therefore, even with straw, you may not put a pot on a tanur. Now, there's one more type of oven that we're going to learn about, called a kupach. A kupach is just a square with one hole. So, notice, since it's one hole, so the heat is in a smaller area, so it's hotter than a kira, which has two holes, more place for the heat to escape, but it's not as hot as a tanur, which has that special heat focusing shape. It's a square. So a kupach shesikur b'kashu b'gvava, if a kupach was fueled with straw and stubble, hareza kikirayim, it's like a two-holed stove, like this one over here. Meaning that if there's straw in there, you can put the pot on, if it's got, without covering the flame. However, because the kupach is hotter than a kira, begefes uve'etzim harehu ketaner. If you put better fuel inside, if you put wood or gefes, which is olive pits, I believe it's called peat in fancy English. If you put peat or wood inside the square kupach, now it becomes too hot to even use. You cannot even cover it. You cannot cover it like the kira. You're not allowed to put a pot on it. It's considered like a tanur. No pot may put under it. Be left on it under any circumstances, because the heat is so much, we are suspicious that someone is going to try to touch the coals, touch the wood to get it hot. Okay, so in summary, we had three types of ovens. We had the two-holed oven called a kira. We had the one-holed oven, which is the hottest, called a tanur. And then we have an in-between oven called a kupach. The kira is lenient, the most lenient, that you can put a pot on it to stay warm without covering the fire, as long as the fire is made with straw, that's going to go out quick. However, if you put wood inside there, you can put some ash or rake out the coals, and then you can leave it in there. The tanur is more strict. Even if you put straw in there, it's absolutely not allowed to put anything in the tanur, because the heat is stronger, and we're worried that he's going to play with the flame. And the kupach is in between. Sometimes you can put it, sometimes you can't. When can you put it? Depends on the fuel. If the fuel is straw, which is going to go out quick, no problem. You can leave it on just like a kira. If it's wood or peat, which is burning well, then it's strict like a tanur, you cannot leave anything on.